Good afternoon, Francis.
What?
I said good afternoon. So my question is with the impersonal, and just if you can elaborate on what you mean by impersonal as far as observation and in making decisions.
An involved or ignorant decision is one which is made taking into account the belief that we are a separate consciousness. Any other decision is impersonal. In other words, it's a decision which is not distorted, tainted by ignorance. Now, another, perhaps more practical way to make this determination is a decision that tries to reconcile truth, love, and beauty. That has to be aesthetical, ethical, and intelligent. Another way to look at it, in a given situation, is to consider the situation with all the elements and also all the parties involved from the vantage point of a benevolent and impartial judge. And this judge would tell for each party what is the appropriate decision. And now you consider only the decision of the judge that refers to you as a party in the situation. And that would be your decision, regardless what other parties decide. Now, the situation evolves. If the other parties decide according to what the benevolent judge would have chosen for them to do, then the situation is going to follow the optimal track towards its harmonious resolution. If the other parties, however, choose a different line of conduct, then a new situation is created after your decision and your action that the impartial judge may reconsider again, would reconsider again, certainly. That may lead to a new decision, which is going to be equally impersonal, but which may seem to be at odds with the first one, because the situation has evolved. So that will be the three ways to determine what would be an impersonal decision.
Thank you.
Francis, one of the characteristics of my mind is that it is extremely busy. And when it's not full of some kind of narration, there's often music playing. Are those two variations of the same theme?
It may be, yes, if there is music, it may be that this music is an avoidance of silence. But it may be also that it is fun, and that it is celebratory, that music plays and you feel the sweetness of it also. So it depends on the... But beautiful music is not really repetitive. You see, when it gets repetitive, the second time we have got the drift, so to speak. So the third time I start thinking of something else. Unless there is a variation, that's a different story. And if there is something a little different, then
Well, the piece that has me at the moment is Mussorgsky's Great Gate of Kiev. And I've been listening to it since I got up this morning, and it's just as good as it was then. But is this something I should turn off like I do the narration?
No, because there are some tunes that are haunting, like the Old Castle, talking about Mussorgsky.
Indeed. Thank you.
Hey, I have the same problem with the idle chatter, and I can kind of tell when, at least for the most part, like when it has in it, the seeds of misery, if it's not overtly miserable. And what I've been doing for the past day or two is just kind of like, just consciously stopping, like, I don't know, just like consciously like not going along with it.
Yes, that's an interesting, you have to see that as an experiment. Because then, when you conduct this experiment, what is interesting is to see the feeling, the impulse to go down into this repetitive process. And because, in a sense, the repetitive process was a way to avoid facing the music I was going to say.
Yeah.
Facing that which triggered the music, right?
Yeah.
This feeling, and that is interesting. Then to always to go upstream, so to speak, in our investigation.
Yeah, and there has been.
And then you feel there is a sense of lack or unpleasantness,
Yeah. That's that one right there. It's like the body is just kind of going a little bit crazy.
And what is interesting is then in this case is to, as an experiment always, to bear with it. Imagine that it is some kind of a Mustang that you want to tame. So you ride it for the first time. So the Mustang doesn't allow for you to do what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can ride it for long enough, then it will finally,
Yeah, and that seems to be the trend, because it's been kind of a repetitive experiment, but it seems to be getting better. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to do, because it's what it is merely bodily sensations.
Mm-hmm.
You see, these feelings are no feelings; they are bodily sensations, and they are not that painful. They simply pretend to be painful. They are not that unbearable. Their unbearability resides in our resistance towards them. So we are piling up resistance on top of pre-existing resistance. So it's a self-amplifying process, you see? So the moment you simply stop, look at it without, that's the important point, without the desire to get rid of it. You see, just to allow for it to say, okay, you're not going to go away, I'm not going to go away either, you see, and I'm going to stay there. You want me to go away, but not, I'm not going away. You want me to fight? No, I'm not going to fight you. I'm just going to be there, patiently, you know, and you are going to outlive it.
Thank you.
In the process, you see that the next time it's less unbearable. You know, the unbearability of it wears off, and at some point it's just a bodily sensation, and we realize it has always been just that. It was simply our involvement with it that was creating its unbearability.
Yeah, like the identification with the...
It's because it's identification, yes.
Yeah.
Aversion is identification. I mean, I'm not talking about natural aversion, you know, aversion. We are averse if it is too hot, if it is too cold, if it is poisonous, of course we are, so it's aversion.
Thank you.
The first thing relating to what you just said to Vishal, when the aversion comes, this feeling, oh, I want that to go away, it's almost a little too late, but I could take back that decision, right?
Yes. You can go back, you choose, you're free at every moment.
Yeah. And because probably we practice it for so long, it seems so natural to be like, going against it, I don't want it. But I don't want to fool myself in saying like, oh no, I welcome it, you know, with a hidden agenda. Yeah. That's the point, because...
you have to welcome it with curiosity, with interest. See, okay, I give it time and space to evolve. It may not evolve in the beginning. It's like frozen food, you know. When you take it out of the fridge, in the beginning it remains frozen. It doesn't flow right away.
And what makes me have that openness to look at it is my love for the truth, right?
Yes, your interest for it, to check it out, to conduct an experiment, a curiosity, because that is something that really, it's a party pooper in our life, this thing. And we have never faced it completely, and it's interesting to face it up to its last root, or its deepest root.
Okay, and thank you. And the second thing is something that I carried from our conversation, I think 2 days ago. It's still about the thing with the airplane. When you said, of course, who would want to be in an airplane that is about to crash? You know, it's kind of a natural thing, like who would want it, right? Immediately it came to me that I was thinking, but since I am the reality, the one reality, so I would want that in a way, right? Because otherwise I wouldn't have decided for that plane to go down.
We are already in a crashing airplane. That's his body.
Yeah. It's true. So, but I could not reconcile these two notions. Because you were saying, like, who would want that? And my answer was, the self would want it, apparently.
When I say who would want that, it's a way of speaking. I didn't put any logical meaning about who was the who wanted that. You know, I'm not that Clintonian in this case.
What? I know. Can you say the last thing again? I'm sorry.
No, it's an American joke.
Okay.
Clintonian. I was not that Clintonian because Clinton said once, it depends of what the meaning of is. So
Okay.
it's a famous quote.
But is my question not because it's when you said that, it seemed so like, oh, it's natural, who would want that? And then I was thinking, I must want that because otherwise it wouldn't happen. You know, I as the real self.
Yeah, but it's not happening for the time being.
That's true. That's true. And when it happens, I can say, I wanted it. Is that correct?
I don't think so. Who wants that?
I'm not satisfied.
There was a book many years ago, perhaps in the 60s, about people, mountain climbers, who had fallen to an almost certain death and had survived. And they had been interviewed by the author of this book. And there was a recurring theme in their experience is that because they really, I mean, the falls were like 100 meters, 200 meters, you know, enormous. And there was a recurring theme is that they, during the fall, which lasted only a few seconds, they saw their entire life in a flash flow by in front of their inner eye, and with the understanding that everything was perfect, had been perfect. That's why there is a big difference between projecting what would happen and what really happens when it happens. You see? You are just, it's intellectual hypothesizing, you know, that you picture yourself, okay, this happens and that, and then, but when things happen, it's always different than what we had thought it would be. Always different. So what's the point in trying to picture what would happen? How would I feel then for these few seconds?
Thank you.
Hi, Francis. I have a question regarding nothing or nothingness, or rather something than nothing. When I'm calm and quiet and go into something or feel into something like one reality, the one reality, I almost always end up at a place or a door, and when I open that, there is nothing. And there's really nothing, and that seems to be the paradise.
Yeah, but you are there, in front of this door.
Yes, and
And you are not nothing.
That's correct.
You see,
No, one second. Please. That's very good.
so this nothing is not a real nothing, it's a projected nothing, which is simply the forgetting that there is you.
Okay, I have a question about psychological trauma. And my understanding is by understanding non-duality, that would negate having psychological trauma. But if there's psychological trauma from the past that's stored in the body and causes illness, how is the body made whole again? Or is it made whole again?
Well, when someone comes and complains about psychological trauma, all I say is, welcome to the club. Because they feel they are special, and that maintains the notion, I'm special. I am, it reminds me, when I was a kid, I didn't have a brother or sister, but I had my first cousin who was playing the part of the brother. And he had had surgeries and things like that. And I was kind of mad not having, because we were playing, kind of up boy ship, you see what I mean, right? Right, I said, I had this surgery, so I had to find something. Yes, my tonsils were removed, And then so we try to be, so with trauma, we are like, I want to be more traumatized than everybody. I want to be special, my trauma. Oh, his trauma is nothing compared to my trauma, That's why I'm fucked up, because, your trauma is nothing, so you can fix it easily, but mine, there is no way, I had this mother, or I had this father, or I had this event in my life, and this and that, and this and that. I mean,
Right, but all people have trauma, and that I can accept, but there's certain people that have manifest illnesses such as autoimmune diseases.
But there are people also who have been subjected to a lot of trauma,
right,
and they are just fine.
Right. So I guess the question is to the person that becomes ill because of that, is seeking the advice. I mean, so I'm one person that has autoimmune disease that manifested just a few years ago, and it's what led me to my spiritual path, because Western medicine wasn't doing the trick, and as I tried spiritual things, all of a sudden I started feeling better.
Yes.
And so it's been a blessing, but I would like to go back to being whole.
You see, the real trauma, there is only one trauma that has been done to us by society, and it's to believe that we are a separate person. And that's a real trauma. And it is very well, equally distributed throughout mankind. That's when I said, welcome to the club. Right. You see what I mean? And that's the mother of all psychological traumas. Then to attribute it to this or that, I mean, everybody has been abused in one way or the other.
Right.
You see, and we have to understand that the events in our life were exactly measured to take us where we are now. And that is true of every living being without any exception. So then this special case of a special trauma, it doesn't convince me. It's all this simplistic explanation, well, you know, he did that because he had that in his past. Well, some people had the same thing in their past and they didn't do it. So, not that I'm making this person responsible, no, nobody is guilty in my book. But to attribute a material cause to a behavior or to the mother of all inadequate behaviors, which is ignorance, is misguided. Because the cause of ignorance is ultimately a choice we made, both internally, by accepting, and externally, by promoting it. Externally, the society promoting it, but we internally accepting it. But we are one with society, so ultimately we are the one who promoted it and accepted it. The point is that at some point we realize nobody forces us to accept it. And at that moment, the universe sees us promoting it.
Promoting what?
The sense of separation.
Okay.
The belief to be separate. That's a trauma. Otherwise, we fall into this mistake that there is something in our past, in our memory, that we have to go back to experience it again, to eradicate it. So we have to go back to the mud, to the, and I am polite, and swim there. But what's the point? Let's live in the sunshine, and if it happens that we fall into the mud, then we have to swim. But we swim this river when we come to it. You see, it's not the same thing. It's no point going back to the past river and to, you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So all this thing of going back, I know it's a psychology, I know Freud, who was completely twisted. He was, he was worse than this patient. I mean, make no mistake about it. I don't know what his mother was like, but
Thank you.
There is freedom after Freud.
I once heard you say that you didn't like mystics so much.
No,
But
I love mystics.
okay. At least one particular time, you said that there was something fishy about them.
What?
The reason why I'm asking is because after hearing you say that, I started to think that maybe my kind of approach, there's something fishy about it in a way.
Well, let me explain to you what, if in the sake of spirituality, I beat myself in the back, or I wear some very, I destroy my body, I find that fishy.
Yeah.
I don't find that loving. You see, I see that as an insult to the Creator and as an insult to love. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are things that are fishy and that are attributed to some forms of mysticism. But the mystic, to me, the real mystic, is one who has had the experience of God. The distinction to be made between the mystical, you say mystical experience, and the non-dual experience is that the mystical experience is a revelation of God, of the divine realm, but there is not but in which there is still the belief that my consciousness is separate, is independent in a sense, and separate. Whereas the non-dual experience is that there is only one reality, and therefore that which in me perceives is God's consciousness.
But would you say there's still value in the mystical experience, that you're one with God? Or is it just like still in one level of illusion?
Yeah, they are not one with God. They reunite, but it's a reunion that you reunite and then each goes its own way.
Right. It's coming.
It's a reunion. Yeah. It's not a union, really.
No. Right.
You see, and then the mystic, when the mystic is in the state of separation, then he complains, and then that is a major source of poetry.
Yeah.
You know? Where are you? I've lost you. Don't you love me anymore? It's very much, it has a very human notation, of what we call human love, or French love, to be more love à la française.
Thank you.
Now there are poets who are sages, in other words, who have the non-dual experience, and then who play the game of being a mystic, right? That's also, that exists, right? But then they know what they are doing.
So speaking of mystics, a couple of weeks ago I went to a Sufi music concert, and on stage they had the swirling dervishes, and I thought, that looks fun, I'm gonna try that. And I started spinning, and I was very surprised I could go and go and go, and I had this like stillness, and I don't know how long it was, a very long time. It's like, I should stop. I'm going to fall down. I'm going to get dizzy. I never did. And even when I stopped, there was no dizziness. And so today when we were doing the movement with our head and our hand and seeing that, we're not the one moving, I had this memory. But the question is, it's like, it kind of feels like it's both. Like there's the stillness, and movement simultaneously. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And both, from all of that.
I've no experience of that. I've seen it. I've seen them on stage. It has a form of beauty. Stillness is long. But it's kind of repetitive as a show. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's not.
It's like Bhajan. Bhajan. It's quite repetitive. It never cut it for me. Because the repetition, after a while, I say, okay, what's next? So, Bhajan, or any repetitive form, may be interesting for the one who is doing it. You see that the repetition creates a form of silence in the mind, you see, and then they have access to a form of samadhi, right? So that's, but as a show, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. It's nothing special to watch. It was more about my experience, and I get caught up when I don't know. I want to. My mind. What am I trying to say? Like somehow I don't like it when we're saying like I'm this and I'm not that. Like I'm still. I'm not the movement, and I'm trying to. Is that just an exercise to see that we're not the body? When we're seeing that you're the stillness and not the movement?
No, I thought that this exercise was, the general idea is what we experience in a static position with the eyes closed. This expansion of the body, this absence of borders. We experience it in an easy position, static position, not moving, with your eyes closed. To integrate that into our daily life. So in our daily life, first, most of the time, the eyes are open. So we have to manage this transition from the eyes closed to the eyes open. And also, the body moves, right? So we have to manage this transition from a body which is not in motion to a body which moves. In this way, we can have the eyes open, we can hear the sound, and we can be active in the world. You see? And the next, perhaps, also to understand that this activity includes mind activity. In other words, that the piece of our true nature is not veiled by thought, by thinking. It's only a certain form of thinking that veils it, ignorant thinking or involved thinking. But spontaneous thinking, celebratory thinking, loving thinking, beautiful thinking, intelligent thinking, this form of thought doesn't veil our true nature. On the contrary, it reveals it. So So the idea is to move from the space between the thoughts and between the sensation to daily life. In India, they would call that to transition from Nirvikalpa Samadhi to Sahaja Samadhi, to our natural state, whether or not perceptions are present. That includes movements, thoughts, visual perception, sounds, etc. So that's the idea. Now regarding the Sufi, we have to understand that at the time of Rumi and Halaj and Ibn Arabi and all these guys, it was not the United States with the Constitution and the freedom of expression. If you would say something which was a little bit off, so the poor guys, they had to negotiate with the powers in place, and with the doxa, with the doctrine that was imposed upon the population with utmost cruelty. We have to understand that. And that's something which is apparently not very well understood by many modern Sufi. They don't understand that these guys, they were doing the max they could do to be independent from the doxa. And if they would live in America in 2019, well, they would be loose cannon and free thinkers. They wouldn't have this contrived respect for the traditions and the books, just as, Meister Eckhart. His saying were excommunicated, and it's very likely that he was killed. And John of the Cross was jailed, and I guess he died before he was killed. So it was these were dangerous times. So they had to deal with the powers. Now we have the luxury to be independent from the belief systems. The Pope has lost a lot of his clout, which is a good thing. Now I've lost the Catholics again. Just lost the Muslims before, Catholics. Now if I say the G word, I'm going to lose the atheists. Only the Hindus are with me.
Yes, but you're talking about bhajans and you don't like them.
You have a point. You have a point. And the worst thing is the bhajans on a Sunday morning with the old lady singing out of tune. And very loud. You know what I am talking about. And because they are getting hungry, because then they have the chapatis, and then they are making space before the badminton match.
You, Francis, you have a picture in your mind.
Yeah, but
Which is
I have witnesses. I have witnesses that I can bring to the court.
You know, I think bhajans or Sufi music or actually any kind of devotional music, I think it can invoke certain beauty in our heart and rekindles a flame, which is still a state. Obviously, it will not take you, but I think it is contributory to.
But I have nothing against music, but I am just making the statement that repetition bothers me. If it gets repetitive without variation, I mean, in music, I understand variations, yes, that's interesting. Because but if it is mere repetition out of tune, that's what I was saying, right? Mere repetition out of tune and very loud.
So actually you're talking about the technical aspects of more than, if you will, the beauty of
music.
Music.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay, here's speaking of music, I want to go back to the music playing in our head, and
seems to be a problem this time.
well, I just wrote about it in a skit about, you know, going into the grocery store and hearing that song all by myself, and you know, and then you walk out and it's playing in your head. You don't want it to, but that happens. That happens to me a lot, and when I go to the gym, you know, I hear whatever music they're playing, or I think about this a lot.
Yes, the other day, I was, earlier today, that which was playing in my head was. Da-da-dee-da-dee-da-dum. I apologize to our friend online, but someone will explain to you perhaps. Someday you will know the truth.
So two things is, just a thought that when, in the past, when I would go to the grocery store and I'd hear all by myself, whatever song it is, I would choose to get involved in the feeling of it, you know. So I'm not. That's like in the past, but now it just plays in my head. So my question is it? Am I using it as a distraction? Because I mean, when I'm driving here, you know, I'll listen to music sometimes, and it'll be fast, and I'll, you know, and then it'll keep playing in my head, and it's sometimes motivating.
The question is, are you enjoying it or not? That's the only question.
Yeah.
If it comes to you, I say, geez, that is still there. You know, then you are not enjoying it.
Right, okay.
But if you go along with it and you say, sometimes I say, what was this tune? I try to find it, and then it comes back.
Okay.
Then, because I know it, I liked it. Yeah, why not, you know?
Yeah, so it's not, I'm not using it to distract me from feeling the present consciousness. Okay.
So some people, if they are in the shower and they hear the running water, it triggers it immediately. The tune thing.
And then the other question I have during the yoga, you were saying everything is in us, and it resonated more with me. I know this really doesn't matter, but I just wanted to bring this up, that I've read about the yogis, you know, being able to obviously levitate and I know that's phenomenal, but it just kind of dawned on me that, you know, if everything is in me, then I can move an object if I wanted to with my beingness. I don't want to say mind, but, you know, not that I would, or who cares, or materialize or dematerialize. I know that's way above me, but it just made sense from what I've read before.
You are materializing. We are materializing everything at every moment.
Right.
So the form of levitation that we are materializing the most often are helicopters. We, as the universe, are materializing levitation in the form of helicopters. Bees also, they do stationary flight, yeah. Yeah, hummingbirds also.
Yeah.
But I've never seen someone, a human being, but that may exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but in my experience, I've never seen it. I remember seeing some attempts at the transcendental meditation, but it was not, the helicopters were not that good.
I understand. Yeah.
But you're most welcome to try it.
I don't really care. I honestly, I mean, I'm not interested in that. It's just
No. There is something to levitation, because we can take it as a physical phenomenon, or we can take it as a yogic experience, as a subtle experience, a different way to feel the body. And that if the body is very relaxed, if the weight is completely abandoned to the support, the body can be in a state in which you feel that you are floating in space. But if someone is taking a video of your body, I'm afraid that's not what the video is going to show. You see? But in cultures and in periods where the subjective experience was more important than the objective experience, then people may have written about that, and then this form of levitation may then be misunderstood in the modern era. You see?
So when you're talking about the person being in such a relaxed state that if you take a photo that it wouldn't show up, okay. So I just want to be clear on that. So it just kind of occurred to me during yoga, that would be, I don't want to think that it's far away, because if I think it's far away, then it's far away. But it dawned on me that the releasing, I guess, into that. I don't know. I can't put words to it, but just being in ignorance for so long, starting to, slowly relax into consciousness. So I'm just saying that's what occurred to me, was just those abilities to that I've read about of the yogis, you know, it's something that could come down the line. But I'm not worried about it.
Yes.
It's just something I wanted.
You know, there is, they call it the cities, you know, the supernatural powers. And they may exist, but there is this, I apologize for those who have heard me tell the story so many times, but since we have rookies here, there is a story of the Buddha coming to the Ganga River and needed to cross the river, and there was there a ferry, you know, a guy with who was transporting the people from to the other bank, and there was this great yogin who was in a hurry, so he just walked on water and crossed the Ganga. And the Buddha was there. He takes the ferry, but then when he's over there on the other side, the yogin is still there. So the Buddha goes for a conversation with him and says, "Wow, I saw you walking on the water. That was quite impressive. How long did it take you to master this supernatural power?" And the guy said, 20 years of intense pranayama, 5 hours a day, plus a very strict diet. And the Buddha says, "Well, it cost me 2 rupees." Yeah, which is evidence that the Buddha was Jewish.
Now you've lost the Jews. You got them. Vishal was wondering when you were going to lose the Jews.
Thank you.
You've talked about consciousness being one consciousness. And when you look at us, and maybe not you, but how we are, how it is in the human, me out there or in here. You talked about it being like cops and robbers. So my question is, kind of what is consciousness's game, so to speak? I mean, if it's just one consciousness and all that's going on is going on, kind of, and maybe that's not an answerable question, I don't know. Yet, in my life, it does make me wonder.
Don't you remember, or don't you find life interesting?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the point. Life is interesting. You know the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. No? It's not that
curse,
bad.
may you live in interesting times, yeah.
Yes, life is interesting. We pretend it is not, but we know it is. As I said the other day, why do we watch movies? Dramas, tragedies, thrillers, horror movies. Why?
For the experience.
Yeah. So, we are in a big drama, tragedy, comedy, whatever, Right there, that's a real thing, this one. I mean, not quite, but... a lot better than the Hollywood stuff. Less repetitive also.
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood, you know, the bad guy is a good guy. At the end, the good guy wins.
So it's just interesting for consciousness to
See
have this story.
within yourself. The answer is within you, and the answer, I give you just a hint, is life is interesting. Most people, they don't want to go out of it. You know, they...
Tooth and nail to stay.
It can only be because they find it interesting. Even those who live this repetitive life, you know, from the 6:30, they wake up, 6:35 they pee. You know,
I can't stand that
you know,
sort of thing. That
7:30 they take the car to commute. 10:30 they arrive at the office.
During the week, in the yogas especially, we get an opportunity to sort of get bigger than our thoughts, bigger than our sensations. There's something inclusive, bigger. And it feels, just this morning I was thinking, you have to sort of cast your lot with, cast your lot. You have to have allegiance to the bigger space or an allegiance to your mind. I guess I'm not 100% sure that I have allegiance to consciousness. You know, I mean, I'm sure I don't, or I would know more than I know, or whatever. But part of that, I was thinking, it feels very accommodating and infinite, big. But I don't feel the love there.
Mm.
You know, it's like that.
First, what we do during the yoga is a reprogramming of the body-mind, of the brain, if you will, or whatever. It's changing the patterns of perceptions of the body and of the world to make them consistent with the possibilities that consciousness is universal.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. So I'm not talking about the meditation. Meditation is a little bit different in that sense that we are not acting, we are not proactively changing anything. We are simply placing ourselves under special conditions that enable us to easily take our stand as consciousness, as welcoming. So that's what we do during meditation. So in order to get a drift of it, to get and in the yoga, it's more work, if you will, in a sense, because we are conducting experiments, really, that's what we are doing. So the question of allegiance to consciousness doesn't really arise there, because it's we are working with the body and with the mind, really. Okay, so the allegiance to consciousness really takes place. For instance, if you hear me say something about consciousness, our true nature, that resonates in you and triggers a yes, or just triggers without a yes, that the access to it through the path of truth, but also there is a path of love and the path of beauty that resonate with different part in you or different modes. So that's when the allegiance, because the allegiance is in fact a recognition of our true nature. So that's grace. It's not something that we manufacture.
And I think I feel that more, I feel that a lot in the satsangs.
Yes,
it feels
but we feel that, I mean, in our just beautiful company with all the beautiful beings here.
Yes.
I mean, yesterday when there was the group singing Latin there, you know, and messing up, I was looking at that. It was so sweet to see you, and you know, such friendship, such relaxation, such lightness, you know, such laughter, you know, such, you know, communion with the ones who were not singing and listening and observing. I mean, it's really, but why put words into it if we have it, right?
Maybe it's maybe what the question is more in the meditation, maybe just something I need to just be longer, do more. I don't think there's a big problem or anything.
I hope not.
Thank you.
So when you were saying that, I really want to see this because I felt really freeing, when you were saying that everything that happens, well, you were talking about trauma, and the things that happen were all for the good of everyone. And so really that cuts any kind of idea of trauma. Basically, it would be kind of self-inflicted, any of your suffering, if you knew that. And it just felt really freeing because my question is, you were talking about how you don't have to go back. So say there's a traumatic event, a loss of a child or loved one. There'll be the thought that, oh, this isn't finished yet, I have to go and pull it out by the roots.
When it comes to you, you deal with it. But to go back to it only extends the recovery. You see what I mean? Because if you have lost a loved one, the period of grief, if you will, there are two forms. There is an aspect which is about me, and now I feel alone, now I feel abandoned, now I feel that life has forsaken me, right? That life is unfair.
The self-inflicted suffering.
That life is unfair, no, or life, God, whatever, you know, and this is about me as a separate person, right? And there is the other aspect, which is the moments of love we have experienced with this loved one, and they come back to us, and there is a form of sadness, but there is a form of sweet sadness there, you see, because they take us back to the love we have shared. And in fact, we have to understand that this love is in a place of eternity. It's not the form of the human body.
Mm.
You know, that's why it's so important when a loved one passes away to spend some time with the body. Because then it becomes clear that the loved one, that which we loved, is no longer there.
Mm.
You see? It's this utter separation between the consciousness, if you will, that we love, and the human core, the form, becomes so obvious in these moments. And that's why it's important to see it and to completely experience it, because it helps with the recovery. You see? And the recovery is that everything that was about me, we forget it. That will be forgotten because me as a person, that's it. But the rest, the sweetness remains. You know, I remember my mother, my grandmother, you know, my father, and the love we have shared, you know. But there are no regrets. You see what I mean? I mean, they were very old, they died. You know, it was normal. Their life had become a little difficult. You know? So, it's important to see the two aspects of grief, understand that one is related to ignorance and that it goes away, and the other aspect is with us. It visits us from time to time, but these are sweet visits. You see?
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, because I think what happens is sometimes there'll just be confusion about, so then a trigger would be something that comes up, would just be something personal, and that can be investigated and seen.
Because usually we discover that this aspect, life, the burning aspect, the me aspect, you know, it's a fear of a new situation. How am I going to cope with a new situation, you know? And in fact, life provides us with whatever is necessary for us to cope with a new situation. So we cope with a new situation, we adapt. That's what the human brain is designed for. But there is a period of uncertainty because it's a big change.
I think for me, my mind just sometimes will think that it has to do something to go get something, so it can be free of something.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say that. You know, it's like this. Sometimes that which happens also is that we wish we could have said things that we didn't say.
Yeah.
And we wish that we wouldn't have said things that we said. Right? Regrets. But we have to understand that whatever has happened in the past, there was not a person doing it. It was the universe doing it through that apparent person. So guilt is a sign of ignorance. Now, sometimes we revisit past events by saying, okay, that was mishandled. So next time, if a similar situation occurs, I will handle it better, and then I take the lesson. Or it was mishandled, but I can do something now to fix it, and then I fix it. For instance, that's the case when people have, you know, parents have conflict with their adult children, things like that, you know, and often, you know, there are simple things to say, such as, you know, I apologize, I wasn't a perfect parent, I know that I have done that to you, I was stupid, and very simple things sometimes repair wounds, so that's an example of not guilt, but intelligence and love, to fix, to heal a wound. Sometimes we have offended people unknowingly. These are the worst ones, and to understand. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Francis, could you say a bit about the experience of pure consciousness without any objects and what that's like?
First, there is no time. In other words, what it is like from the vantage point of the mind, instantaneous. Instantaneous?
Mm-hmm.
Because the mind has no access to it, but gets altered, transformed. The content of consciousness gets transformed by the experience of pure consciousness. It's a moment of renewal, or it's a creative moment. An example of that is when we understand something, true understanding. The understanding changes the content of the mind. Before I didn't know, I didn't have the answer. Now I have the answer. Something has happened in between. But this aha moment, the mind has no access to it. It was transformed by this creative moment. So that's one element. The other element is that I am very present. The mind is not present, but I am very present. For instance, in the moment of understanding, I have no doubt that I am the one who understood. Right? So in order to claim that I am the one who understands, I have to be present during the aha moment. Therefore, in this moment of pure consciousness, I am present as pure consciousness. And then, although this moment of pure consciousness means, in this case, no phenomenal content. No phenomenal content means no thought, no bodily sensation, no external sense perception. That's what it means. So, none of those. In this moment of no phenomenal content, it doesn't mean that there are no qualities at all. Quite the opposite. There are qualities, happiness, peace, love, beauty, intelligence or understanding, and a few more qualities. But these qualities are not phenomenal qualities like length, weight, color, shape. So this consciousness is self-evident to itself. Its reality among the qualities shines. And the light of its reality that shines is also the light of its eternity. And with the light of its eternity comes the liberation from being an object subjected to birth and death. So the experience of pure consciousness is the experience through which we know that you are conscious. So better than for me to describe it, which I have done, you can go to it by asking yourself the question, how do I know I am conscious? Experientially, how do I know that? Where does that come from? You know? And as you become more and more interested in this, revelations will come to you. And that's why I was giving some description of it to facilitate the various revelations that may come to you. But definitely, one important avenue of revelation is the reality of it, which paves the way to its eternity. Okay.